The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for over 2 million years. Hundreds of alien races worked together under their laws. Among all their rules, one stood above the rest. It was whispered in dark hallways and written in ancient books. The rule was simple but clear. Never provoke humanity. The warning came 300 years ago when humans first traveled faster than light. The old alien races looked at Earth's history and saw something that scared them. They watched videos of human wars. They read about human determination. They saw how humans refused to quit even when death was certain. The old aliens made a choice that day. They decided to leave humans alone. But the Zephron Dominion did not listen to warnings. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UES Horizon. His crew of 200 people had been exploring space for 18 months. They mapped new star systems and studied distant planets. It was peaceful work. Jake liked it that way. Next to him, Lieutenant Amy Chen watched the computer screens while Chief Engineer Greg Palmer checked the engines. Amy suddenly looked worried. Her fingers moved fast across the controls. Several alien ships appeared around them from nowhere. They had weapons pointed at the horizon. Jake's face became serious. He pressed a button on his chair. The ship's alarm began to sound throughout the halls. He spoke into his radio, telling his crew to prepare for possible attack. Amy was already sending an emergency message back to Earth. The alien ship surrounded them like wolves around a wounded deer. The largest ship sent them a message. The words were in broken English because their translator was not very good. The message said that humans were trespassing in Zephron space. The aliens demanded that Jake surrender his ship and crew. They would become workers for the Zephron Empire. The word they used made Jake's blood turn cold. Slaves. They wanted to make humans into slaves. Greg looked at Jake with anger in his eyes. Throughout all of human history, slavery was a deep wound. It was something humans had fought wars to end. Now these aliens wanted to bring it back. Jake spoke calmly into his radio. He told the Zephron ships that they were peaceful explorers. They meant no harm. He asked the aliens to let them leave. He said this could be solved with talking, not fighting. The alien response was immediate and brutal. A red beam of energy shot through space and hit the horizon. The impact threw everyone to the floor. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Jake could hear the sound of air leaking into space from damaged sections. Amy pulled herself back to her station. She had blood on her face from a cut on her forehead. She shouted that the aliens had fired on them. They were under attack. Jake grabbed his chair and pulled himself up. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. He gave the order to fire back with all weapons. He told Amy to make sure their emergency message reached Earth. The galaxy needed to know what happened here. The Horizon fought as hard as it could. But it was a science ship facing military warships. Within minutes, the human ship was dying. The Zephron sent soldiers onto the Horizon. Jake saw Greg fighting 3 aliens with nothing but a tool from the engine room. Greg refused to surrender even when it was hopeless. Then a stun weapon hit Jake and everything went black. The message from the Horizon reached Earth 72 hours later. President Helen Brooks sat in the emergency council room with her advisors. She watched the recording 3 times. Her face grew darker each time she saw it. Helen spoke quietly, but her voice was filled with anger. She said the aliens took their people. They attacked without warning and wanted to make humans into slaves. Admiral Kevin Price stood next to her. He was the highest military commander on Earth. He told the president that the Galactic Council sent them a message. The council wanted to help solve this problem peacefully, but they also sent something else. It was an old document. The council wanted humans to read it before making any decisions. Helen opened the file on her computer. It was a warning written by the Galactic Council long ago. The old aliens had written it after meeting humans for the first time. The document talked about human history. It described human wars and human survival. It explained how humans went from living in caves to traveling in space in just a few thousand years. Most races took millions of years to do the same thing. The document said humans were one of only 3 species to invent nuclear weapons before achieving world peace. It noted that humans created beautiful art during their worst times of suffering. But the final part made Helen stop breathing for a moment. The document said that humans had a unique trait. When facing total destruction, humans did not just fight to survive. They fought with such intensity that they would destroy themselves if it meant destroying their enemy too. The old aliens called it mutually assured destruction. They said humans were the only species to use this idea as a weapon. The recommendation was clear. Avoid conflict with humanity at all costs. The document said humans were gardeners now, but they remembered how to be warriors. The peaceful life had not made them weak. It had only made them patient. Helen closed the file. She looked at Admiral Price with cold determination in her eyes. She told him to send a message to the Zephron Dominion. The aliens had 48 hours to return every human unharmed. After that, Earth would come for them. The Admiral asked what they should do if the Galactic Council tried to stop them. Helen's answer was simple and terrifying. She said the Council would remember why they wrote that warning in the first place. They would learn that the warning was not just words on a page. It was the truth written in blood and fire from human history. Earth had been peaceful for 300 years. They had built a civilization based on exploration and knowledge. They had put away their weapons and focused on art and science. But the Zephrons had made a terrible mistake. They thought human peace meant human weakness. They were about to learn the difference. The universe had warned them. They chose to ignore it. Now they would pay the price for that choice. The Zephron Dominion had ruled their part of space for 5,000 years. They built their empire by conquering weaker species and forcing them to work. High Commander Zethrak stood in his command center on the Zephron homeworld. He was reading reports about the human ship they captured. The vessel had good technology. The 200 humans would be sent to mining colonies after they learned to obey. A junior officer named Krevix came to report. He said the humans sent them a message. Earth demanded the return of their people within 48 hours. Zethrak's 6 eyes glowed with amusement. He asked what would happen if they refused. Krevix said the humans claimed they would come and take their people back by force. The entire command center filled with laughter. The sound was harsh and clicking, the way Zephrons laughed. They had crushed dozens of alien races. What could one primitive species do against the might of their empire? They had thousands of warships. Earth was just one planet. Zethrak ordered his people to ignore the message. If the humans were stupid enough to attack, the Zephrons would capture more ships. Human technology was surprisingly advanced. It would serve the Dominion well. High above Earth, humanity was preparing for something the galaxy had not seen in 300 years. They were preparing for total war. Admiral Kevin Price stood in the war room deep beneath the command center. Holographic displays showed every military ship humanity owned. Ships were being called back from every corner of space. Factories that made civilian products were changing to make weapons. And most importantly, doors were being opened to places that had been locked since the old wars ended. Colonel Lisa Bennett appeared on his screen. She was in charge of special weapons. She told the Admiral that the President had given them access to the Legacy Arsenal. Kevin's face became grim. The Legacy Arsenal contained weapons from humanity's darkest days. These were weapons designed when humans were most paranoid and creative about destruction. They were locked away when humanity joined the peaceful galactic community. They were considered too terrible to ever use again. Kevin told her to show him what was there. The screen filled with weapon designs. There were kinetic weapons that could crack planets open. There were tiny machines that could take apart matter at the molecular level. There were devices that could make stars explode. There were biological weapons designed to target specific genetics. At the bottom of the list was something called the Harbinger Protocol. It had every warning symbol in the human database next to it. Kevin asked what the Harbinger Protocol was. Lisa's face went pale. She explained it was a doomsday weapon designed during the old Cold War. It was never tested. It used quantum devices to create a cascading dimensional collapse. In theory, it could erase an entire solar system from existence. They buried it because even the scientists who made it were terrified of their own creation. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. He told her to keep it sealed. But he wanted everything else prepared. If they were going to do this, they would do it properly. On the prison moon of Kethros 7, Jake Morrison and his crew worked in dangerous mines. They worked alongside dozens of other species the Zephrons had conquered. The aliens had tried to break the human spirit through harsh treatment and conditioning, but they underestimated human stubbornness. While other species had given up hope, the humans kept their spirits alive through small acts of resistance. They told each other stories about Earth. They reminded each other of their names. They refused to forget who they were. During a short rest period, Amy whispered to Jake. Her voice was rough from breathing the thin atmosphere. She asked how long before Earth came for them. Jake looked at her and then at the rest of his crew. Some were injured. All were exhausted. But none had given up hope. He told her with complete certainty that Earth was coming. The question was not if they would come. The question was how much of the Dominion would be left standing when they were done. Greg had lost weight, but none of his fighting spirit. He managed a grim smile. He said he almost felt sorry for these aliens. They had no idea what they had done. An older alien shuffled closer to them. His species was called Nathril. He had been a slave for 3 generations. He told the humans they spoke with confidence, but the Zephrons had thousands of ships. Human forces could not stand against such numbers. Jake met the alien's eyes. He said that humans fought 2 world wars with terrible weapons. They killed millions of each other over ideas and imaginary lines on maps. And humans were still here, still fighting, still surviving. Jake continued speaking. He said what scared him was not that humans might lose this war. What scared him was that humans might win too completely, because when humans decided something was their enemy, they had a bad habit of being thorough about destroying it. 48 hours after the ultimatum, Zethrak received another message from Earth. This time it was not a demand. It was a declaration of war. The message said the Zephrons had been warned. The Galactic Council warned them. History warned them. Humanity warned them. The Zephrons chose to ignore all the warnings. They attacked a peaceful ship. They took human citizens. They threatened them with slavery. The message continued. It said there would be no more negotiations. There would be no more chances. Humanity was coming, and they were bringing 300 years of forgotten fury with them. The message ended with a grim statement. It said, "May God have mercy on the Zephron species because humanity would not show any." The message was signed by every member of the United Earth Council. It was broadcast on every frequency the Dominion used. Zethrak finally felt something he had not experienced in decades. He felt fear. He pulled up the intelligence files on humanity and really read them for the first time. He saw the history of human warfare. He saw the technological adaptation. He saw the sheer refusal to quit even when facing extinction. Zethrak turned to Krevix. He said quietly that perhaps they should have listened to the warnings. Krevix asked if they should return the prisoners. Zethrak's pride fought with his survival instinct. Pride won, as it often does before a great fall. He said no. He ordered the mobilization of the entire Zephron fleet. If humans wanted war, they would show Earth why the Dominion had never been defeated. In orbit around Earth, a fleet gathered. It was unlike anything seen since humanity's old wars. 500 warships assembled, each one filled with weapons that represented humanity's combined genius for destruction. Leading them was the UES Retribution, a dreadnought so massive it had its own gravitational field. On the bridge, Admiral Kevin Price looked at the holographic display. It showed their destination clearly. Zephyros Prime, the enemy homeworld. His tactical officer reported that all ships were ready. Kevin thought about Jake Morrison and his crew. He thought about the warning the Galactic Council had written. He thought about all the times humanity promised itself it would never wage total war again. Those promises were about to be broken. Kevin spoke quietly to his helmsman. He told him to engage faster than light engines. It was time to remind the universe why they wrote that warning about humanity. The fleet vanished in a flash of brilliant light, leaving Earth behind. They were going to war. The galaxy was about to remember that humanity's 300 years of peace had not made them forget how to fight. It had just given them time to imagine new nightmares. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the Zephyros system. For a moment, everything seemed frozen in time. Admiral Kevin Price stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution. His eyes were fixed on the tactical display showing the enemy response. Commander Ryan Foster reported from the tactical station. He counted 3,000 enemy vessels. They ranged from small corvettes to massive battleships. The Zephrons had formed a defensive wall around their home planet, Zephyros Prime. 3,000 ships against 500. On paper, the numbers looked impossible. But numbers only told part of the story. They did not account for human determination or human ingenuity. Kevin ordered his communications officer to open a channel. He wanted every ship in the system to hear his words, including any Galactic Council observers who might be watching. His voice was calm, but absolutely cold. He identified himself and explained why they came. They were here to retrieve their people. The Zephron Dominion had one final chance to return human citizens unharmed. They had 10 minutes to respond. Kevin continued speaking. If the Zephrons chose to fight, they needed to understand something. Humanity would not stop. They would not negotiate. They would not show mercy. Every ship that fired would be destroyed. Every military installation would be reduced to atoms. If they had to turn the Zephron capital world into a lifeless rock to get their people back, they would do it without hesitation. The 10 minutes crawled by in terrible silence. On Zephyros Prime, High Commander Zethrak watched the human fleet with growing fear. His military advisors assured him that their numerical advantage would guarantee victory. But something in the human admiral's voice made warning bells ring in Zethrak's mind. His chief strategist insisted the humans were bluffing. 500 ships could not possibly defeat their might. Zethrak was not so sure anymore. He had finally watched footage from humanity's old wars. He saw humans fighting with terrifying determination. He saw ships deliberately crashing into enemy vessels when their weapons failed. He saw soldiers holding impossible positions. He saw a species that viewed death as acceptable if it meant taking the enemy with them. Zethrak suddenly ordered his people to return the prisoners. His subordinates stared at him in shock. They could not believe what they were hearing, but before the order could be executed, the tactical display lit up with warnings. The human fleet was moving. They had not waited for a response. Kevin gave the order that would echo through galactic history. All ships were authorized to fire at will. He told his fleet to execute Plan Thunderstrike. They would show the galaxy why Earth went 300 years without war. It was because they remembered how to wage it perfectly. The human fleet split into precise formations. Every movement showed countless hours of simulation and training. The Zephrons charged forward in a conventional battle formation. They were confident in their numbers. They learned their first lesson within seconds. Human ships opened fire with weapons the Dominion had never seen before. Railguns fired projectiles at incredible speeds. The kinetic energy turned into miniature explosions that tore through shields designed for energy weapons. Missiles released swarms of small drones that targeted power cores and weapon systems with surgical precision. But the most terrifying weapons were called cascade bombs. When the first one exploded in the center of the Zephron formation, it did not produce a normal explosion. Instead, it created a rapid oscillation in the quantum field. Every shield within 10 kilometers suddenly failed catastrophically. Hundreds of Zephron ships found themselves completely unprotected. The human fleet attacked without mercy. Lieutenant Kate Rogers piloted her fighter through the chaos of battle. She and her squadron had the dangerous job of reaching enemy command ships. Around her, space lit up with weapons fire and dying vessels. She called out to her squadron on the radio. She told them to form up on her position. They were going after the big battlecruiser with extra sensor arrays. That was the enemy command node, her wingman Danny Cruz responded. He reported 12 enemy fighters on their tail. Commander Paul Henderson and his interceptor squadron swept in from above. His energy cannons blazed with deadly accuracy. He told Kate his people would handle the enemy fighters. She just needed to worry about that battlecruiser. Kate pushed her fighter to maximum speed. She weaved through debris and weapons fire. The Zephrons were skilled pilots, but they fought like they had never faced an enemy willing to trade blow for blow. Human pilots had no such hesitation. She armed her special missile. It was called a penetrator. It was designed to punch through armor and deliver a payload of tiny machines directly into a ship's core systems. She called out the launch code and fired. The missile streaked toward the battlecruiser. It dodged point defense fire through random movements that would have torn apart a weaker design. It struck the hull, burrowed through 10 meters of armor, and released its payload. Within seconds, the massive ship's lights began flickering. The tiny machines were dismantling its power grid from the inside. Tactical control confirmed her kill. The enemy command and control was fragmenting. They were losing coordination across their fleet. On the Retribution's bridge, Kevin watched the battle with grim satisfaction. The Zephrons were learning what countless human enemies had learned throughout history. Numbers meant nothing if you could not use them effectively. His communications officer reported they were receiving a transmission from Zephyros Prime. High Commander. Zethrak wanted to negotiate. Kevin's response was cold. He told them to inform Zethrak that negotiations were over. The Zephron commander should focus on evacuating his military installations because human forces would start hitting them in 8 minutes. The communications officer said the Galactic Council was also transmitting. They demanded an immediate ceasefire. Kevin's expression hardened. He told them to inform the Council that they had 300 years to control the Dominion. They chose not to act. This was what happened when you let predators roam free. Humanity would cease fire when their people were safe. Not one moment before, the battle raged for 3 more hours. The Zephrons fought with increasing desperation. They slowly realized the humans were not just trying to win. They were trying to eliminate the Dominion's ability to threaten anyone ever again. Every military shipyard was destroyed. Every weapons platform was reduced to debris. Every orbital defense station was systematically demolished. When the firing finally stopped, 2/3 of the Zephron fleet was nothing but wreckage. Their homeworld's orbit had become a graveyard of shattered vessels. On the prison moon of Kethros 7, Jake Morrison felt the facility shake. Human rescue ships were entering orbit. The Zephron guards lost all confidence and fled their posts. Locked doors opened automatically as human special forces teams hacked the facility's systems. Captain William Carter of the Earth Marine Corps led the rescue team that found Jake's group. He saluted Jake and told him they were here to take everyone home. Jake looked at the young Marine. He saw the determination in his eyes. He saw the combat patches on his armor showing he had fought through hell to get here. Jake asked how bad the battle was. The captain reported they lost 60 ships and 3,000 personnel. But they got everyone out. Every human the Dominion took was now free. And they freed a lot of other species too while they were at it. He figured while they were liberating prisons, they might as well be thorough. Amy laughed. The sound was half sob and half relief. She said that was the most human thing she had ever heard. As Jake and his crew walked to the rescue ships, they passed groups of other freed prisoners. Dozens of species stared in awe at their rescuers. The old Nathril who had doubted Earth's strength approached Jake. The alien said quietly that Jake had been right. The universe warned the Zephrons. They did not listen. He asked if the Zephron species would survive this. Jake looked back at the planet below. Fires burned in the atmosphere as human forces dismantled every military structure they could find. He told the alien that Zephrons would survive. Humans were not exterminators, but the Zephrons would never forget what happened when they ignored the warnings. None of them would. In space above Zephyros Prime, Admiral Kevin received word that all human prisoners were recovered. He also received a message from High Commander Zethrak offering unconditional surrender. Kevin ordered his people to accept the surrender. Then he composed a message to the Galactic Council. His message was clear and direct. Humanity came to the stars hoping to leave their warlike past behind. They built a civilization based on peace and exploration, but the Council needed to understand something. Peace was a choice humanity made, not a weakness they possessed. The Dominion learned that lesson today. It should be the last lesson anyone needs to learn. The human fleet began its journey home. They left behind a shattered empire and a clear message to the galaxy. The warning had been ignored. The price had been paid. Now everyone knew that humanity's 300 years of peace had been a gift to the universe. It was a gift that could be taken back if necessary. 3 weeks after what galactic historians called the Zephyros incident, Commander Jake Morrison stood before the United Earth Council. The council chamber in Geneva was packed with representatives, media, and diplomats from many different species. Everyone wanted to hear what happened from someone who lived through it. Jake's voice was steady, but his eyes showed the pain he carried. He told them about the Zephron guards. They treated humans like property, not people. The aliens made them work 16 hours every day. 3 members of his crew died in the first week. The atmosphere was toxic and their bodies could not adapt fast enough. The Zephrons did not care. To them, humans were just another conquered species. President Helen Brooks listened quietly. The decision to unleash Earth's military had been hers alone. The weight of that choice showed in the lines around her eyes. She asked Jake if humanity's response was appropriate. Jake did not hesitate. He said if she was asking whether humanity overreacted, his answer was no. If she was asking whether the Dominion got what they deserved, absolutely yes. But if she was asking whether he felt comfortable with what happened and the thousands who died on both sides, then no. War was never comfortable. It was just sometimes necessary. The Galactic Council had sent an official delegation to Earth. This was the first time since humanity joined the galactic community. Ambassador Vexthor was an ancient being from the oldest part of space. The ambassador addressed the assembly with a weight that came from living for countless ages. The council wanted to express both condemnation and understanding. They condemned the violence, the destruction, and the loss of life, but they understood the provocation. The Zephron Dominion violated a fundamental law of galactic society. They enslaved a sovereign species. More importantly, they enslaved humanity, a species the Council had specifically warned against antagonizing. Admiral Kevin Price sat beside Jake. He raised his hand to speak. He said with respect that the Council had 300 years to stop the Dominion from enslaving other species. They did nothing. He told them not to condemn Earth for having the courage to do what the Council would not. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species supported humanity's actions. Others feared what Earth's display of military power meant for galactic stability. The debate raged for hours until President Brooks called for order. Her voice cut through the noise. She wanted to make something clear. Earth did not want this war. Humans came to the stars with open hands and hopeful hearts. They put away their weapons and focused on building a better future. But the moment the Dominion attacked human citizens, the aliens made a choice. They chose to see peace as weakness. They were wrong. Helen stood and addressed not just the chamber but the entire galaxy watching the broadcast. Humanity would not be predators in space. They would not seek conquest or domination, but they would also not be prey. Any species that thought they could attack humans, enslave them, or treat them as lesser beings would face the same response the Dominion faced. She continued, speaking with fire in her voice. Humanity had given the galaxy 300 years of peace. No one should mistake that for an inability to wage war. On Zephyros Prime, High Commander Zethrak no longer commanded anything. His own people removed him from power. The Zephrons now faced the enormous task of rebuilding their shattered empire. The Dominion's military had been reduced by 70%. Their shipyards were gone. Their economy was in ruins. Zethrak sat in a detention cell waiting for trial. A human officer, Lieutenant Colonel Sam Turner, served as one of the guards ensuring fair proceedings. One day, Zethrak spoke to Sam through the cell bars. He said the humans destroyed his people. He asked if it was worth the thousands of human lives lost. Sam looked at the fallen commander with a mixture of pity and steel in his eyes. He reminded Zethrak that the Zephrons took human people as slaves. They fired on a peaceful vessel. What did Zethrak think would happen? That humans would just accept it? Sam continued. Humans had a saying, "Don't start trouble and there won't be any trouble." Zethrak started it. Humanity finished it. Zethrak protested about the cost of so many lives. Sam's response was firm. The cost was paid willingly by every person who went into that fight. There were some things worth fighting for. Freedom was at the top of that list. The people humanity lost were heroes who died making sure no one else would have to live in chains. Yes, it was absolutely worth it. The trial lasted 3 months. In the end, Zethrak and his senior commanders were found guilty of war crimes, enslavement, and crimes against thinking beings. The sentence was harsh but not cruel. They received lifetime imprisonment. The convicted were forced to work rebuilding the very facilities they destroyed. Many noted it was a very human kind of justice, punishment mixed with purpose. Meanwhile, freed prisoners from dozens of species were gradually being returned to their home worlds. Many had been enslaved for generations. They had no memory of freedom. Human counselors worked with alien social workers to help them adjust to their new lives. The Nathril elder named Kelvor chose to visit Earth before returning home. He stood in Times Square surrounded by the bustle of humanity going about their daily lives. Tears ran down his face. Lucy Campbell was the volunteer coordinator assigned to help him. She asked what was wrong. Kelvor told her nothing was wrong. He had been a slave since birth. His parents were slaves. His grandparents were slaves. For 63 years, he knew nothing but servitude. Now he stood in the center of the civilization that freed him. He watched people who did not even know his name live their lives in peace. It was overwhelming. Lucy smiled gently. She explained that to humans, freedom was not a privilege. It was a right. When someone tried to take it away from humans or anyone else, humans got upset about it. The phrase about humans getting upset became popular across the galaxy. It was humanity's gift of understatement to the cosmos. But beneath the humor was a real understanding. Something had shifted in the galactic power structure. The Galactic Council, after much debate, issued a formal decree. The Zephron Dominion would be placed under Council supervision for the next century. Their military would be limited to defensive forces only. Most significantly, slavery in all its forms was declared illegal throughout Council space. Humanity was appointed as one of the enforcing species. Admiral Kevin said it was about time when he heard the news. But not everyone in the galaxy was pleased with humanity's new status. In the dark corners of space, other empires watched the Zephyros incident with calculating eyes. Some saw it as a warning to avoid humanity. Others saw it as a challenge to overcome. In the war rooms of the Krellix Consortium, military planners studied every second of battle footage. General Thrax noted that humans had weapons they had never seen before. But humans were still mortal. They still bled. They still had emotional attachments that could be exploited. His aide looked uncertain. He pointed out that the Zephrons thought the same thing. Thrax dismissed the concern. The Zephrons were arrogant fools. The Krellix would be smarter and more patient. They would study humans, learn their weaknesses, and when the time was right, they would show the galaxy that humanity could be beaten. What Thrax did not know was that human intelligence had already intercepted their communications. In a secure facility on Mars, the newly formed Strategic Threat Assessment Division analyzed every signal and communication from potential threats. Director Chris Morgan reviewed the Krellix transmissions with a tired sigh. He said they never learned. His deputy, Agent Nicole Foster, shook her head in agreement. She asked what they should do. Chris said they would do what they always did. Watch, wait, and prepare. If the Krellix were stupid enough to try something, humanity would be ready. But he hoped they were smart enough to back down. He was tired of war. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison returned to his home for the first time in months. His family greeted him with tears and hugs. His daughter Sophie, now 10 years old, wrapped her arms around him and refused to let go. She asked if he really fought aliens. Jake knelt down to her level. He explained he did not fight them. He was captured. But many brave people fought to rescue him and everyone else who was taken. Sophie asked if the aliens would come back. It was a question every parent on Earth faced. How do you tell children about darkness in the universe while still letting them hope? Jake answered honestly. He said he did not know if other aliens would attack. But if they did, humanity would be ready. Maybe the ones who saw what happened would be smart enough to leave Earth in peace. Sophie thought about that. She said she thought aliens would be smart, because her dad said humans were scary when they were angry. Jake laughed. The sound was genuine for the first time in months. He agreed that humans could be pretty scary, but they were much nicer when people were nice to them first. As Earth settled back into routine, as the fleet was repaired and the fallen were honored, humanity sent one more message into the void. The message was simple and broadcast on every frequency. It identified the senders as humanity. It said humans came to the stars seeking peace, knowledge, and friendship. That had not changed. But humanity would not tolerate aggression. They would not accept slavery. They would not be victims. The message concluded with a final statement. The universe warned the Zephrons. They ignored it. Other species should learn from. 5 years after the Zephyros incident, humanity had settled into its role as one of the galaxy's guardian species. The United Earth Defense Force had grown larger. Young recruits like Ensign Tyler Hayes joined not because they wanted war, but because they understood that peace required strength. Tyler stood on the bridge of the UES Guardian. It was one of the new generation of peacekeeping vessels that patrolled frontier regions. His captain was Commander Rachel Woods. She was a veteran of the Zephyros campaign, and she ran a very disciplined ship. Rachel asked Tyler for a sensor reading. Tyler reported clear space with no hostile contacts. There was only commercial traffic and a few survey vessels moving through the area. It was a typical day, which was exactly what they had been fighting for. Boring patrols were a sign of success, not failure, but 5 sectors away in the shadow of a dying red star, the Krellix Consortium was making its move. General Thrax had spent 5 years preparing for this moment. He studied every battle tactic humanity used. He analyzed every weapon system. He identified every cultural weakness he could find. He assembled a fleet of 15,000 ships, including vessels from allied species who resented humanity's growing influence. Thrax addressed his assembled forces with passion. Today they would correct the galaxy's mistake. The humans positioned themselves as heroes and liberators, but they were conquerors like any other. They destroyed the Dominion not out of justice but to eliminate a rival. The Krelliks would show the galaxy that humanity was not invincible. The target was the colony world of New Horizon. It was home to 2 million humans and the galaxy's largest refugee settlement. Thrax chose it carefully. The planet was protected by only a small garrison fleet of about a dozen ships. By the time reinforcements arrived, New Horizon would be under his control. Humanity would face a terrible choice: negotiate or risk civilian lives in a long siege. What Thrax did not know was that humanity had learned more than combat tactics in the last 5 years. They learned intelligence gathering from species who perfected it over thousands of years. In the Strategic Command Center on Earth, Director Chris Morgan watched the Krelliks fleet assemble. There was satisfaction on his face. He told Admiral Kevin that the enemy was actually doing it. Admiral Kevin, now Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces, stood beside him. He asked how long until the Krelliks reached New Horizon. Chris answered 18 hours at their current speed. Kevin asked about the human fleet. Chris smiled. The fleet was already in position. Operation Shepherd was ready to begin. Kevin allowed himself a cold smile. He said they would teach the Krelliks the same lesson they taught the Dominion. Some lessons required repetition. Operation Shepherd had been in planning since the first intercepted Krelliks communications. Rather than wait for an attack, humanity prepared a trap. While the Krelliks thought they were attacking a lightly defended colony, they were actually heading into a killing zone. Around New Horizon, hidden in the asteroid belt and masked by advanced cloaking technology, waited 300 human warships. These were not the older vessels from the Zephyros campaign. These were new designs incorporating 5 years of research and lessons learned from the last war. The UES Guardian received emergency orders to proceed to New Horizon at maximum speed. Rachel read the orders twice before speaking over the ship-wide communication system. She told all crew members to go to battle stations. Krelliks forces were heading toward New Horizon. The Guardian was being positioned as part of the defense. It was time to earn their pay. Tyler felt his stomach drop. He joined the fleet hoping he would never see combat. Now it looked like that hope was being tested. Rachel noticed his expression. She asked if he was nervous. Tyler admitted he was. He had never been in actual combat before. Rachel told him that was healthy. Soldiers who were not nervous before battle were either liars or dangerous. She paused before continuing. She reminded him why they were there. 2 million civilians on that planet did not ask for this fight. The Guardian crew was standing between those civilians and 15,000 ships that wanted to use them as hostages. That was worth being nervous about. The Krelliks fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Horizon system. General Thrax felt satisfaction when his sensors showed only the expected garrison force of 12 human ships. His tactical officer reported that the humans scrambled what forces they could. But they were heavily outnumbered. They would have to surrender or be destroyed. Thrax ordered his communications officer to broadcast their demands. The colony must surrender immediately, or they would begin bombarding population centers from orbit. He gave them 10 minutes to comply. The response came from the garrison commander, Captain Jennifer Cole. She told Thrax this was his only warning. He should withdraw immediately. He was flying into a trap, Thrax laughed. The sound was like grinding metal. He said those were brave words from a commander whose fleet was outnumbered 1,000 to 1. He admired her spirit, but mathematics did not lie. Jennifer's response was simple and cold. She agreed that mathematics did not lie. That was when the asteroid belt came alive with light. 300 human warships dropped their cloaking systems simultaneously. The tactical display suddenly showed the Krelliks fleet surrounded on all sides. Thrax's triumphant expression turned to horror. He could not believe what he was seeing. Their intelligence report said this was impossible. Admiral Kevin's voice came through on all frequencies from his flagship, the UES Vindication. He told Thrax that their intelligence said exactly what humanity wanted them to hear. The Krelliks spent 5 years planning an attack. Humanity spent 5 years planning the defense. Now Thrax had a choice: leave immediately or be sent home in pieces. For a tense moment, space seemed to hold its breath. Then Thrax made the fatal mistake of choosing pride over wisdom. He ordered all ships to attack formation. They would focus fire on the garrison vessels first. The Krelliks fleet charged forward. The human ships responded with cold efficiency. This was not the desperate battle of Zephyrus Prime. This was a carefully orchestrated operation. Every move was practiced. Every possibility was planned for. Commander Rachel directed the Guardian into battle. Her orders were crisp and clear. She told weapons to target enemy command ships. She ordered the helm to execute evasion pattern Delta 7. All power went to forward shields. Tyler found himself swept up in controlled chaos. His training took over as he coordinated sensor data with the weapon systems. Around them, space erupted in fire and destruction. But this battle was different from Zephyros. The Krelliks had prepared for the humans they studied, not the humans who learned from their last war. Every tactic Thrax used had a counter ready. Every weapon he deployed faced an effective defense. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Krelliks' fleet was shattered. Unlike the Dominion, Thrax had not been given a warning. He saw what happened to species who attacked humanity and chose to do it anyway. The price for that choice was complete defeat. Thrax's flagship was crippled and drifting in space. It was boarded by Earth Marines. Lieutenant Maria Santos led the team that took the bridge. She pointed her weapon at the alien commander. She told him he was under arrest for attempted genocide and crimes against thinking beings. He had the right to remain silent. She suggested he use it. Thrax looked at the human soldier with defeated eyes. He said they studied humanity. They prepared for everything, Maria corrected him. The Krelliks prepared for the humans they wanted to fight, the ones who would blindly charge into an ambush. They forgot that humans were also the species that invented clever tricks in ancient wars. War was not just about courage. It was about being smarter than the enemy. In the aftermath, the Krelliks consortium collapsed within weeks. Their allies abandoned them. Their own citizens rose up against the leadership that brought such disaster. The galaxy watched and learned an important lesson. On New Horizon, celebrations erupted as citizens realized they were safe. The refugee populations looked at their human protectors with new respect and gratitude. Elder Kelvor, the Nathril who witnessed humanity's fury at Zephyros, now lived in New Horizon's main settlement. He addressed a crowd at the city center. His words were broadcast across the planet. He told everyone they witnessed something remarkable today. Not just humanity's military strength, though that was impressive, but their restraint was more important. Humans could have destroyed the Krelliks' fleet completely and killed every soldier. They did not. They disabled ships and took prisoners. They showed mercy even to those who showed them none. Kelvor continued. This was the true measure of a great civilization. Not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to know when not to. Humanity demonstrated both. Back on Earth, President Helen Brooks addressed the United Nations for the last time before her term ended. She told the Assembly that 5 years ago, she gave the order that led to the Zephyros War. It was the hardest decision of her life. She carried the weight of every person they lost. But she did not regret it. By standing up for their people and refusing to let aggression go unanswered, they did not just save their crew, they changed the galaxy. Helen paused and looked at the representatives. Today, slavery was illegal across council space. Dozens of species who lived in fear now lived in freedom. Predator empires thought twice before attacking.